In a previous video, I explained how I built a small magneto-hydrodynamic boat with great performance. Great performance should indeed be understood here for an MHD-powered boat. In its weight category, it is very likely to hold world records for speed both in seawater and in brine. For what I know, other MHD-powered boats able to go faster are about 20 times heavier or even more. This performance comes from a boat design especially optimized for making short runs in a straight track, but also from the use of an innovative ductless MHD thruster design, which I called all-around. Here is the first prototype in operation. The thrust is of 9 mN for 5.26 amperes, which required a voltage of 14 volts in brine. The thrust was measured using a magneto-hydrodynamic pendulum. Once the current is set, the thruster moved by a small distance which can be measured. It takes some time to stabilize. For the technical details, the ratio between the thrust and the thruster weight is expected to be equal to the ratio between the displacement and the arm length. With all the appropriate corrections done, the thrust was finally found to be about 9 mN, just a bit less than 1 ground force. Now that we have seen what it is capable of, let's talk about the design of the thruster. In short, the all-around thruster design is a rotated version of the ducted design beyond the flat design while turning the inside into the outside. That may seem unclear at that point, so let me explain or remind first what the duct and flat designs are and which rotation I'm referring to. And let's start with the basics of magneto-hydrodynamics. An element of fluids dV crossed by a current density J and submitted to a magnetic field B receives an elementary force dF called the Lorentz force equal to the cross product of J and B times dV. The total force applied on the fluid is obtained by integrating this elementary force over the whole volume of fluid within which J and B coexist. Due to the action-reaction principle, the force applied on the thruster is the opposite of this total force. Considering the properties of the cross product, the force is maximized when J and B are close to orthogonal. The most common design for MHD thrusters is a duct with a rectangular section in which two magnets are placed on two opposite sides and two electrodes are placed on the other two opposite sides. This ensures that the current density and the magnetic field within the duct are roughly orthogonal to each other and that the generated force is along the duct's main axis. With the approximation of a constant current density and a constant magnetic field within the duct, the overall force F is equal to JBSH, with S being the area of the electrodes and H being the distance between them. This can be simplified as F equals IBH, with I being the total current flowing between the electrodes. The force is produced only where the current flows, and that is inside the duct. This is why this is referred to as internal conduction MHD. In the early 90s, Mitsubishi developed and tested a prototype ship powered by ducted MHD thrusters. Using superconducting magnets, it reached 3.4 meters per second in seawater. Many details about it can be found in the document referenced below. More recently, and at a model scale, the magnet maker K&J Magnetics designed a small submarine, also with a ducted MHD thruster. Here we can see its thruster in operation. Another interesting prototype powered by a ducted MHD thruster is the Easter catamaran. Many information about it and about MHD boat design in general can be found in the paper reference below. The Easter catamaran was able to reach 13 cm per second in seawater and 30.5 cm per second in brine. Let's now come to the flat design, the only implementation of which I am aware of is that of William Fraser. In a pedagogical video, William explains how the flat design differs from the duct one, and this is his schema of the duct design. Mine is just a rotated version of it. Now, this is William's schema of the flat design. The main difference is that the magnets are not placed face to face with the same polarity, but side by side with opposite polarities. The electrodes are not placed face to face either, but roughly in the same plane as the magnet faces, and one of them, the cathode, is split into two parts. Another important difference is that there is no more duct, and this is why this is referred to as external conduction MHD. According to this schema, even though the current and magnetic lines are no longer straight and parallel, they are expected to remain roughly orthogonal to each other almost everywhere. A coherent and significant global force should then be generated. Finally, the thruster does not constitute a protuberance to the hull, but it is nicely integrated with it, completely eliminating the form drag and skin friction drag associated to the duct. This is the boat navigating in seawater. With a clever setting, the boat's thrust was measured at 19 millinewton for about 50 watts. And its speed was measured at about 16 centimeters per second, also for about 50 watts. Using a combination of open source tools, I have been able to compute and to visualize the electric field, the magnetic field, and the thrust for a duct design with two magnets and two electrodes. In this simulation, the magnet section is of 20 mm x 10 mm, and the width of the electrodes is of 20 mm. The length of the duct is of 100 mm. The background of the figure represents the intensity of the magnetic field. The white lines represent curves of equal intensity with a spacing of 0.1 Tesla. The orange lines represent the streamlines of the magnetic field, and the cyan lines represent the current lines. These are spaced according to 40 quantiles. Exactly 2.5% of the current flows between two adjacent ones. While the current lines are straight, parallel, and equally spaced, this is not the case at all for the magnetic lines, even inside the duct. Even where magnetic lines are roughly parallel and equally spaced, the intensity of the magnetic field may vary significantly. The global formula F equals IBH remains usable though if we replace B by the average of its horizontal component inside the duct. Here is the same figure for the flat design with magnets and electrodes of the same size, except that the cathode has been split into two parts with the same total length. The black lines extending from the electrodes delimit the area containing the conductive fluid. The choice of this extension is simple, but it is arbitrary, and other extensions could also have been considered. The conductive zone is in principle infinite, but it is bounded in the context of the simulation. It is remarkable that while the magnetic and electric lines are both highly curved, they remain almost orthogonal almost everywhere. It may not be obvious at first sight that the flat design is a rotated version of the duct design, so let's see it with an animation. Remarkably again, the magnetic and current lines remain almost orthogonal almost everywhere during all of the rotation. In order to get the all-around design, we just need to push the rotation further. And again, the magnetic and current lines remain almost orthogonal almost everywhere during all of the rotation, and they remain so at its final state. At the end, the two adjacent magnets become equivalent to a single magnet twice thicker. A strict orthogonality is not necessary. Even for 45 degrees instead of 90, 70% of the thrust remains. Significant deviation from orthogonality happens mostly in the corners. This is a pity, as this is where the magnetic field and the current density are the highest. However, the latter effect dominates, and the thrust is in fact much stronger there. Let's now see how the thrust is spatially distributed using maps of the Lorentz force density, and let's start with the case of the square duct. The white lines represent here quantiles of thrust by decreasing intensity. Exactly 10% of the thrust happens between adjacent lines. For this, the symmetric areas need to be grouped together. The pressure is higher close to the magnet and lower close to the electrodes, with a ratio between the highest and the lowest of about 3.42. Let's now see the map of the Lorentz force density for the all-around thruster. The highest pressures are close to the magnet on all of the four faces and especially on the corners. The lowest pressures are far away from the magnet, and the ratio between the highest and the lowest within the figure is of almost 5 orders of magnitude. This is why a logarithmic scale is used for the display. The white lines here are also quantile lines, but with a spacing corresponding to 10% of the thrust in the square duct case. The thickest one corresponds to the complete thrust of the duct thruster. Every line beyond it corresponds to an additional 10% of thrust. This is the map of the Lorentz force density for the square duct with the same logarithmic scale. And this is the evolution of the map of the Lorentz force density during the rotation, also with the same logarithmic scale. Each time a white line enters the figure, this is a 10% increase in thrust compared to the square duct. This happens mostly near the end of the rotation. We may now compare the all-around and the duct designs. As already mentioned, thrust is generated all around the magnet, exploiting all of the magnetic field, not just a fraction of it. Also, as the fused magnet is thicker, the magnetic field close to it is stronger and it goes farther. The thrust is then higher. The current density is lower in the center of the faces, but it is much higher in the corners where the magnetic field is also significantly stronger. If the original duct is square and in 2 dimensions, the same current is drawn by the duct thruster and the all-around one. The drawn current actually varies by no more than 10% during the whole rotation. Finally, according to the simulation, for the same magnet weight and the same electric power, the all-around thruster delivers almost twice as much thrust as the ducted one. But thrust is not everything, and the all-around design offers other benefits. It leads to less wet surface and less frontal section, and therefore to smaller form and skin friction drag forces. It does not require a strong and heavy mechanical structure for keeping 2 magnets apart. It does not require a specific mechanical connection to the boat hull, as the wires bringing the current are enough for that. It is very well suited for small-scale implementations, but it should also be good for quite large ones. So far, I found only one possible inconvenience, though possibly a serious one. It produces much higher current densities on the border of the electrodes, and these might deteriorate faster. Also, it may be difficult to actually get all of the benefits of the corner effect due to implementation constraints. It is, for instance, difficult to make very thin electrodes. Let's now have a look at the intermediate case of the flat design. It uses more of the available magnetic field than the duct design, but still a large part of it is unused. Here, thrust is generated on 2 faces, just as in a duct, but also near 4 corners and between the magnets. There is also a corner effect in this case, but it is weaker than in the case of the all-around thruster, and the overall gain is of a bit less than 20%. The other comments for the all-around case also apply to the flat design, but with effects of smaller intensity. Finally, the flat design is a clear winner for the weight surface reduction, just none is added to that of the hull. This might compensate for the fact that it produces less thrust than the all-around. William Fraser's flat implementation uses magnets that are proportionally much thicker. According to the simulation, the gain is very similar to the previous case, and this choice may have other benefits. In his video, William hypothesized that his boat performed significantly better than the Easter catamaran because of the weight surface reduction. That certainly played a significant role, but even without that, a flat thruster produces more thrust than a ducted one for the same magnet weight and electric power. Still from simulation, the optimal thickness to width ratio is somewhere in between, with a value of about 0.8, but the additional gain is quite small. Simulations also showed that longer magnets should lead to better performance. We may now have some discussion, starting with the fact that it is counterintuitive that the flat and all-around designs perform better than the ducted one. If it were not, we would see more flat and all-around designs out there and less ducted ones. I have already addressed many of the following points, so this is mostly a recapitulation focusing on the counterintuitive aspects. First, a duct is especially designed for creating uniform magnetic and electric fields orthogonal to each other in order to produce a coherent and strong resulting force. How is it that we can get the same and even better without enforcing it in such a way? Though this is less obvious a priori, it is not surprising a posteriori. A rectangular duct is just a way to produce orthogonal magnetic and electric fields, which is easy to figure out because of the uniformity. However, uniformity is not necessary and both the orthogonality and the coherence remain in the considered rotation operation. Once this is understood, and a fortiori once it has been seen, it becomes obvious a posteriori. Now, quasi-orthogonality and coherence are necessary but not sufficient, and other aspects remain counterintuitive. The next one is related to the fact that in open configurations like the flat and all-around ones, a non-negligible fraction of the current flows in regions where the magnetic field is very weak and is therefore wasted as no significant thrust is produced there. That is true far away, but in the intermediate regions, this is partly compensated by the large size of the regions. Next, again due to the open configuration, the current density near the magnets is significantly lower than in the duct case. That is true near the center of the faces, but it is completely false near the corners. Actually, there is a singularity for the current density near the corners, and the current density is much higher there, where the magnetic field is also stronger. This corner effect is the main factor. The conjunction of a strong magnetic field and a high current density there largely compensates for all the other losses. Finally, in the all-around design, the thrust near the electrodes is almost as high as near the magnet, while it was much lower in the case of the duct and flat designs. This is simply because the magnet is close in this case while it is not in the others. This, in conjunction with a stronger corner effect, is what explains why the all-around design performs significantly better than both the duct and flat designs. We may now discuss the scalability of the all-around and MHD1 designs. If we scale everything up by the same factor, the maximum speed is expected to increase by the square root of this same factor. This means that for going twice as fast, one needs a boat which is 4 times longer and 64 times heavier. This is in theory. In practice, the gain can be better than that in the beginning because the effect of the electrolysis loss decreases and bigger batteries have higher power density and higher C ratings. In the case of seawater, the performance can be improved by using higher voltage by placing batteries in series. That was not possible for the MHD1 as the batteries were already in series for brine. With a scale factor of about 2.7, it should be possible to build a model with a weight comparable to that of the Easter catamaran and of William Fraser's boat. With an electric power of about 2 kW, it should be able to run at about 35 cm per second in seawater and at about 50 cm per second in brine. 2 kW may seem a lot, but the Easter catamaran already operated at 1.2 kW, and LiPo batteries can provide that for about 300 grams. Let's now try to compare globally the duct, flat, and all-around designs. For a global comparison, thrust is not everything, and hydrodynamics significantly matters too. These three designs have different implications in terms of additional form and skin friction drag forces. The boat stability may be an issue too, and the relative locations of the Lorentz force and the boundary layer might have some influence too. Regarding the rectangular duct design, it seems to be the worst for both thrust and hydrodynamics aspects. Regarding the flat versus all-around designs, the former has an advantage in terms of hydrodynamics, and the latter has an advantage in terms of thrust, and it is not clear so far which is the best overall. More studies and experiments need to be done for sorting it out. Moreover, other variants corresponding to other intermediate cases are also possible. For instance, the open duct design, intermediate between the duct and flat ones. Indeed, the extensions of the electrodes need to be curved, as this was also the case for the flat design itself. This has little influence on the overall thrust, even if the external electrodes are a bit bent too. Another possibility is to push the rotation a bit beyond flat. This is good for the thrust, and it is also very good for the form drag and skin friction drag forces. This is not so good for boat stability, however, as it can easily roll and the gravity center might not be low enough. Finally, I would like to thank all of those who shared their experience and provided great advices, and also those who developed and made freely available the amazing tools that I use for making the simulations and the visualizations. I am also sharing, as is, the code that I developed for that at the link below.